Confronted my attacker in court, risking everything to honor my lost love and fragile heart, hoping for justice and peace. 6 months ago, I lost the love of my life unexpectedly to liver failure. At the time, I was 3 months pregnant, but I didn't find out about the pregnancy until he was already in total organ failure. He never knew that I was carrying our child. My world shattered in that hospital room, the secret never to be shared with him. 2 months after his death, when I was 5 months pregnant, I was walking home one night through a quiet alley by my house. Suddenly, a stranger assaulted me. I don't want to relive the details, that night still haunts me, but it was terribly violent. I remember the pain, especially when he kept striking my stomach. That assault ended the life that was growing inside me long before I got the chance to hold my baby. My world, once again, crumbled at my feet. 3 days after the attack, the police caught the man who did this to me. They found enough to charge him with a litany of crimes that could keep him locked away for 60 years. Since then, I've been stumbling through the criminal justice system in a kind of numb haze, each day hoping I'd never have to relive it all in court, but now the trial is just a month away. Tomorrow, I begin trial prep with the DA's office. The man who did this to me says we had extremely rough, and yet consensual, sex. Apparently this is a common defense when there's DNA evidence. My rape kit gave them the proof they needed. I am utterly terrified. Every time anyone mentions my boyfriend's name, I dissolve into tears. The prospect of standing in a courtroom, talking about my love, the one I lost, while exposing every detail of our relationship to strangers, it's unbearable. I cry even at the thought, let alone when I'm forced to speak his name. I'm so afraid I'll come across as some grief-crazed, desperate woman, someone the jury might believe would actually agree to rough sex with a total stranger in a filthy Wisconsin alley during the dead of winter. What if I can't stop crying while I testify? What if my brokenness makes them question everything I say? Part of me wonders if I should drop out as a witness, fading into the background rather than risk not being believed. Could I testify in a year or two, when the pain isn't so raw? Or is that even possible? Testifying about someone you love who's passed, or describing the nightmare that stole them from you, seems impossible. Even after 5 months, I can't summon the strength to say his name aloud without being consumed by tears. How will I survive facing a courtroom and dissecting the most personal, fragile elements of our life together, while everyone I know and many I don't listen and judge? I know, everyone mourns in their own way, at their own pace. But what if you're forced to run before you can even walk? I try to heal, I go to therapy. I take my medication. I chase after every healthy coping strategy I can find. Still, my body betrays me, dissolving at even the slightest memory of him, let alone when I must speak. My doctor suggested beta blockers like Klonopin on the days of the trial to steady my nerves, but I fear coming off cold and emotionless, letting the jury think I'm a soulless shell instead of the woman whose grief and loss are still as raw as fresh wounds. The man who attacked me comes from wealth and has hired the finest defense attorney around. I know they'll try to rip apart my relationship, paint me as so lonely and desperate that I'd somehow seek out risky sex with a stranger. I need to be 10 times stronger. If there's any wisdom or advice about finding the strength to speak when you're not ready, about surviving your grief in public, about making your voice heard in a courtroom, I am desperate to learn. I know that putting this man away is the only way to truly honor everything I've lost. I'll do anything. I'll try anything. 13.5 months passed, 13 long, brutal months, before justice finally arrived. It felt like I'd been holding my breath that entire time, waiting for the system to work. When it was time to write my victim impact statement, everything froze. For weeks, I sat with my pen, unable to put a single word to paper. Nothing felt right. Nothing could capture what had been taken from me. I spent days in deep reflection, and slowly something inside me shifted. I realized that what mattered more to me than anger was mercy, empathy, and my own healing. Once I saw that, the words poured out of me and I sat and wrote my entire statement in a single night. The day I read my words in court, I looked up to find tears streaming down the judge's face. When I glanced at my rapist, he was crying as well. His family cried. My own family cried. My words had reached them all. The judge granted the one request I made: if and when we should ever wish, restorative justice programming would be allowed. In that courtroom, after all the horror and all the waiting, I found a small piece of peace. After the hearing, the victim's advocate came up to me and hugged me, thanking me for having the courage to say something so powerful. I told her I meant every word. It's hard to describe what I'm feeling now, except to say it feels like a massive weight has been lifted from my shoulders. I know I'll remember this experience for the rest of my life. There's comfort in finally feeling like I can start to let go. It's important to me to get this off my chest, so I want to share the statement I gave in court. Please bear with me, it's a little long, but I need to let it out. I know that crime affects everyone differently. For me, empathy and seeking a different path, restorative justice, felt right. But I truly understand that others in my situation might feel the total opposite, and that's valid too. Everyone deserves to feel how they feel. Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to address the court today. This crime that the defendant committed against me has touched every part of my life. Before all this happened, I knew who I was, and I liked who I was. Everything, my education, my military service, my professional career, had laid solid groundwork for my future. I was proud, independent, and I looked forward with real optimism. But one terrible night, the actions of the defendant changed me forever and altered the course of my life in ways I never could have imagined. Suddenly, it didn't feel like my life belonged to me anymore. In a single night, he shattered me into 1,000 pieces, and for the last 13.5 months, I've been trying to pick up those pieces and pull myself back together. For a long time, I stopped functioning like a person. After that happened, I couldn't sleep for months. I spent endless nights rocking back and forth with the lights on, my bedroom door barricaded, gripped by fear. You see, Your Honor, when I didn't know where my attacker was, he was everywhere. Every sound in the night became him. Every noise outside my window was him. He was always coming for me. The nightmares haunted me, replaying everything that happened until I could hardly breathe. Many days, I couldn't get out of bed, let alone leave the safety of my house. Even on the rare occasion I did go out, I felt a constant, painful hypervigilance, jumping at every little sound, always checking behind me. I missed countless hours at work. My performance fell apart. I fell behind on my bills, even my mortgage at one point, and I'm still cleaning up my life, bit by bit. Weeks passed where I cried every time I had to go to the bathroom, pain from my injuries, a constant, wounding reminder of that night. Anxiety racked my body, every frozen moment of panic brought back the terror of being utterly powerless while he assaulted me, so paralyzed with fear and pain that my body refused to fight. I still wish I'd fought back harder, but I know now my body was just frozen. The moment he forced himself upon me in a way I had never experienced before, I felt as if my body had split in two. That pain was like nothing I'll ever forget, all-consuming, unmovable, and there was nothing I could do but endure it. When it was over, all I could do was run, terrified he'd follow me. That's a feeling that still shadows me. Months later, the flashbacks started. When they came hard. On better days, the flashbacks only lasted seconds, but they'd leave me with panic attacks and lingering pain for days. On bad days, the flashbacks seemed to last forever, just as real, painful, and distressing as the actual event. Sometimes I missed days of work just to recover. I'll never forget the worst day. I ended up in the hospital. For the first time in my life, I now take medications for anxiety, sleep, mood, nightmares. In the past year, I've racked up more than 30 appointments, mostly with psychiatric services or therapy, sometimes urgent mental health care, and once, a hospitalization. I am fortunate to have access to low-cost health care, because without it, I doubt I'd be standing here today. My medical bills only amounted to a few $100s, but what they really represent is the severity of the impact this has had on me. My faith in others was utterly destroyed for the longest time. I silently condemned every man I didn't know, instantly expecting they meant me harm. Any man who even looked like the defendant filled me with revulsion and fear. I couldn't speak with colleagues, healthcare workers, even friends without fear, none of it their fault, but all because they simply reminded me of him. I want to make it clear, I don't know the defendant, Mr. Name withheld. He is a stranger to me. I'm not seeking revenge, I didn't even know him before this. When the officer asked me if I could name the man who raped me, I realized I had absolutely no idea who he was, a feeling that gnaws at me to this day. I didn't even learn his name until days after he was arrested, when someone from the DA's office said it offhandedly. I'll never forget hearing that name for the first time, it knocked the breath out of me. Even after a year, I feel an empty space inside me from this, and there's not a single day I don't think of what he did. One of the most powerful feelings I'm left with is guilt, not for the rape, which was entirely his doing, but for the consequences of reporting it, for putting a man behind bars and knowing his loved ones will suffer because of it. That thought weighs on me often. His punishment will be hard, but I try to see the best in people. I want to believe that he, Mr. Name withheld, is strong enough to persevere and can use this time for true healing and growth. The most important thing now is that something like this never happens again. I don't believe anyone should be defined solely by the worst thing they've ever done. What I want most is peace. Having served my own kind of sentence, I need to find a way to live out my days with some peace in my heart. If it were up to me, all I would ask for is restorative justice. I want nothing more than for the defendant to take responsibility, to understand the resounding consequences, not just for me, but for everyone touched by this, and to learn, to move forward, so we all can. So I have only one request for you, Your Honor. I ask you to consider amending the no-contact order to allow for an exception, should there be a case for restorative justice programming. I understand this may not be the right time or place, and that the court's job is to hold people criminally responsible. But I hope, Mr. Name withheld, that you find the courage someday to know your participation in restorative justice won't lead to more punishment. You know what happened on the night of January, date withheld, 2019. You know it, and I know it. That can't be erased. Please remember, you are paying for your own choices, and I'm left paying for a choice you never gave me. My request today is about giving you an opportunity for accountability, a chance to set things right, not just for us but for all those who love us. I hope that you find strength in moments of peace, even in hard days. I wish you safety, good health, and continued support from loved ones while you are incarcerated. I know I never would have made it this far without the incredible love and help of my own family, colleagues, and friends. When your punishment is behind you, I truly hope you can reintegrate and build a happy life. Most of all, I hope you discover the courage to accept responsibility for what you've done. That's what has been weighing on me. Having had the chance to finally speak it out loud, and to the person who changed my life, I finally feel like I can begin to heal. Update 1. I wanted to share an update because there are some things I feel need more explanation, especially given the kinds of questions and responses I've received. First, yes, he's in prison now, and he'll be there for quite a while. I honestly don't know if my statement had any impact on how long his sentence is. In my state, I was able to read my victim impact statement to the judge after he had already been found guilty, but before the sentencing decision was finalized. By that point, his tears and apologies, and what I had to say, couldn't help him get out of anything. The court already convicted him. I noticed the judge was visibly affected when listening to my words, but when it was time for the judge to explain the rationale for the sentence, the focus was firm. It is the court's responsibility to protect the safety of the community. When all is said and done, the defendant committed a violent crime and the court cannot ignore that. That's not a direct quote, but it's the gist. According to the prosecutor, the sentence he got was right in line with what's typical for this sort of crime. I've also gotten a lot of questions about restorative justice, RJ. It's obviously a topic that brings out strong opinions. I remember first learning about RJ watching a 60 Minutes episode, Season 51, Episode 30, from May 2019. The host began with something that resonated with me. When we first learned about the RJ project, it was hard to believe and we certainly didn't understand it. The program introduces victims of violence to the convicts who committed the crime. Our first reaction was, who would want to do that, and to what end? And honestly, RJ is a deeply personal choice, and it is absolutely not for everyone, and that's totally okay. The court holds offenders criminally responsible, but it doesn't necessarily help victims heal. RJ can be a solution, when both the victim and the offender choose it freely. It's not perfect, our system isn't, but it can give the offender an opportunity to really take responsibility for the harm they've caused, beyond serving time. And it gives the victim a voice in healing. Participation in RJ does not affect his sentence in any way. He won't get out early if he participates, and he won't get extra time if he refuses. It's just an opportunity to face accountability in a different way, with a trained facilitator, while keeping me safe from re-victimization. Maybe I'll change my mind at some point about participating, but I'm just grateful the judge understands the importance of giving me that choice. If I do decide to pursue RJ, it wouldn't be for a long time, and he'll still be in prison. I'd be meeting him there. Finally, I want to acknowledge the overwhelming number of messages I received from others sharing their own stories, so many with that common thread of me too. I cried reading each one, and to everyone who reached out, all I can say is, stay strong, but please remember to be gentle and kind to yourself too. Do what feels right for you, and don't believe anyone has the right to make you feel ashamed or guilty about your feelings. After trauma, you get to process things in your own way, however you need. If you're a rape victim like I am, you're probably used to not being believed. But you never have to prove anything to anybody. I'm not always perfect, sometimes I even forget to take my own advice. But if you ever find yourself doubting or feeling overwhelmed, please remind yourself to take it easy on yourself. You're doing the best you can. Update 2. Hello, everyone. It's been a whirlwind of emotions and experiences since the last time I updated you. I've needed some time to reflect, breathe, and let life settle down a bit. But now, I'm ready to share what's been happening. When the trial concluded, I thought I'd feel an immediate sense of closure. While there was a fleeting moment of relief, it quickly became apparent how complicated healing truly is. Some moments of calm have transpired, though, and I'm learning to embrace them. Most recently, I took a huge step forward by working with a local organization that facilitates support groups for survivors of violence. I must admit, the first meeting was daunting. I walked in with my heart pounding, uncertain of what lay ahead. Would I be overwhelmed by others' stories? Would my own story stir up buried feelings I wasn't ready to confront? To my surprise, it was extraordinarily cathartic. I found a room brimming with individuals who, despite their diverse backgrounds and experiences, shared an unspoken understanding of pain that transcends words. That unmistakable sense of kinship was both heartbreaking and healing. There's this incredible strength in shared silence and nods acknowledging heartache. For those curious about restorative justice, I've decided to remain open to the idea, but haven't actively pursued it. The choice itself brings some peace. I'm grateful to know it exists as an option, but for now, that path feels like a distant arch of the journey. My primary focus remains on my own healing and supporting others in their pursuit of peace. In other, more unexpected news, the community took quite a stand in light of my story. A local nonprofit organized a series of workshops titled Reclaim and Rebuild, aimed at creating safe spaces and enhancing community awareness surrounding violence and recovery. They kindly invited me to share my insights at the inaugural event. Public speaking usually sends my anxiety through the roof, but this felt like an invitation I couldn't pass up. To prepare, I spent days writing and rewriting what I wanted to convey. On the day of the workshop, as I stood before a small crowd in the cozy community hall, it dawned on me how far I'd come. My trembling hand steadied as I began to speak. I didn't just recount story details, but emphasized my journey, recovery, and how others could support survivors in meaningful, respectful ways. The response was humbling. Many attendees approached me afterward, either whispering their thanks or sharing their own stories. It was a reminder of the broader impact one person's healing journey can have, a ripple effect I hadn't expected, but wholly welcomed. On a personal note, I've also dedicated time to exploring hobbies that once brought me joy but were sidelined due to trauma. Painting, for instance, my brushes had gathered dust in the corner for too long. Dipping them in bright colors again was like a necessary rebirth. Each stroke across the canvas is a reclamation. Additionally, I've discovered a new, serene outlet in gardening. I started with a few herbs on the windowsill, and gradually, it expanded to a small backyard garden. There's something profoundly symbolic about nurturing growth from the soil, watching seeds sprout, flourish, and bloom. It mirrors my own slow but steady journey of planting seeds of hope within myself. Therapy continues to be an anchor for me. I'm developing new strategies and refining past coping mechanisms with my therapist's guidance. From practicing mindfulness to embracing vulnerability, these tools have slowly shifted from feelings of survival to genuine excitement about the future. I'm aware that setbacks might come, and the triggers may not completely vanish. But each day brings a new opportunity to face them, with courage and, most importantly, self-compassion. Update 3. Since the last update, a profound shift has taken place in my life. I reconnected with my late boyfriend's family. It was a decision I both feared and longed for, knowing it would force me to confront both joyful and painful memories. But something inside urged me forward, whispering that it was time. We met at a small coffee shop that was a favorite of his, a place where snippets of laughter and love floated between sips of hot drinks. Walking in, I felt a wave of nostalgia almost knock me off my feet, but I was gently steadied by a strong hug from his sister. The reunion was heartwarming, filled with stories and reminiscences that once would have brought me to tears, but now felt strangely comforting. We all sat around the table for hours, sharing both smiles and sorrow, each moment both a goodbye and a hello. In a bittersweet twist, my late boyfriend's family had no idea that I'd been pregnant. When the conversation inevitably steered towards him and my subsequent trauma, I felt it was only right to tell them. As I spoke, I watched their faces transform, first from shock, then to a gentle acceptance, and finally to a depth of understanding and shared grief that only those intimately connected by love experience. His mother held my hand, whispering that the love we shared had brought new chapters into both our lives, even if only briefly. Navigating this reconnection has been difficult but necessary, like pulling at a splinter that's been festering far too long. It was painful, but the relief afterward was palpable. We've decided to stay in each other's lives, celebrating his memory and supporting one another in this patchwork of love, loss, and new beginnings. On a happier note, something rather unexpected happened. Amidst the chaos of healing, I met someone new, a gentle soul who admires the light in others and nurtures it. We met during a Reclaim and Rebuild event where he volunteered to facilitate mindfulness sessions. At first, it was purely platonic, an easy camaraderie that existed in shared silence as much as in conversations. As time passed and layers of friendship deepened, we discovered mutual passions and dreams that intertwined seamlessly. Unlike anything I'd imagined so soon, a relationship blossomed and took root from this friendship. It wasn't dramatic or world-altering, but tender and patient, like butterflies on a warm spring day, fluttering but never rushing. Understandably, there were apprehensions. How does one open their heart again to love after such trauma? How can moments be cherished without the shadow of loss murmuring reminders of past pain? Yet, with every gentle morning stroll, every shared sunset, and every moment of laughter, I found answers wrapped in new love, intimately simple yet intricately profound. His understanding of my journey is refreshingly compassionate. There's never pressure to forget, only gentle encouragement to remember with love instead of fear. He openly embraces everything I shared with my late boyfriend, honoring the importance of what was while patiently looking forward. Being with him is like slowly uncovering parts of myself I thought I'd lost, a rediscovery wrapped in kindness and respect. Outside of new romantic pastures, I continued work with a nonprofit, now coordinating a yearly event titled Empower. It focuses on encouragement and courageous vulnerability, offering both workshops and individualized support to survivors and those around them. Just planning it has fueled my passion, bringing fulfillment I hadn't thought possible during those darker days. In giving back, I've redefined my self-worth and purpose, feeling special where I once felt broken. Through everything, trials, connections both old and new, unexpected love, and meaningful work, I've come to embrace the unpredictable nature of healing. Update 4. First, the biggest, most surreal piece of news. Last month, the district attorney's office reached out and asked if I would be willing to participate in a pilot program for restorative dialogue, not just with my attacker, but with a broader focus. They're exploring ways to provide more holistic healing for victims whose trauma echoes through a community, and apparently, my name kept coming up. At first, I was terrified. My heart pounded so violently during the initial Zoom call that I thought my voice would simply refuse to work. But here's what was proposed: rather than facing my attacker directly right now, I would join a carefully selected circle of survivors, advocates, and even a few people with lived experience on the other side of violence, not my perpetrator, but people who could speak honestly about the chain reactions that violence causes. I agonized over the decision for days, but, in the spirit of everything I've learned over these wild, jagged months, I said yes. Last week, I joined that circle for the first time. Picture, a drafty old community center, too many mismatched chairs, a shocking array of herbal teas, and a group of people all carrying invisible baggage as they sat down and tried to speak, tentatively, about what really happens after the headlines move on. The first night, I barely spoke. Other stories cut me like shards. One woman, a former nurse, lost her job because of PTSD following an assault. One man, quiet and earnest, shared what it was like to go to prison for a split-second decision made in rage, and the shame of facing his own kids after. At first, everyone seemed hesitant, talking around grief in neat, clinical terms. Then, out of nowhere, the former nurse started to weep, and just like that, the whole facade crumbled. A retired priest, there, as a kind of witness, I suppose, simply reached over and squeezed her shoulder. The rest of us followed suit, tears mixing with laughter and, after, something dangerously close to relief. I went home that night feeling more exposed than I had in months, but also, hard as it is to admit, a little lighter. The next week, I talked, not about the attack, not outright, but about the weird, empty ache that lingered where my old life had been. The group listened, and there was no panic, no pressure, just a shimmering stillness. For the first time, I wasn't a story on the news or a cautionary tale, I was just a person, stitched back together with trembling hands, talking about what it's like to have all your plans collapse, and to have stubbornly started new ones. But that's just the beginning, because participating in the circle gave me the nerve to take another wild step. Last Friday, I attended a ceremony the city held for survivors and their allies, where they unveiled a small garden behind the courthouse. Originally, I was meant to just observe, but 2 hours beforehand, one of the organizers called in a panic. The keynote speaker, a state senator, was snowed in 30 miles away. Would I please step in? I almost said no. All the old terror welled up, but then I remembered the group from the night before, and heard the nurse's words ringing in my ears. If we don't tell our stories, someone else will write the ending for us. So I stood behind a rickety microphone, looking out at a sea of faces, old, young, some familiar from the nonprofit, even the DA, and I told the truth. Clumsily, awkwardly, but honestly. I talked about what real healing looked like for me, messy, unpredictable, slow. I talked about the power of unlikely connections, and how the worst night of my life set off a ripple that, through months of therapy, workshops, quiet garden mornings, sleepless panic, and these new circles, somehow became a pond with room for things to grow. Afterwards, a woman about my mother's age approached and pressed a little paper envelope into my hand. Inside was a single sweet pea seed, and a note, for your garden, and whatever hope you choose to plant next. That seed sits on my nightstand now. I haven't planted it just yet. Maybe I'm waiting for some natural milestone, or maybe it just helps to know it's there, a quiet promise of new color, whenever I'm ready. And speaking of gardens, this spring, my tiny backyard plot exploded. The herbs and wildflowers grew like they were showing off. For the first time, neighbors started stopping by to ask about the improbable jumble of color. One afternoon, as I dug around the roots of a stubborn thistle, a soft voice startled me. It was Christina, the victim's advocate for my case. She'd been transferred but stopped by because she just happened to be in the neighborhood. I later learned she'd quietly been checking in with clients, without fanfare. We sat on overturned buckets, knees in the mud, talking about everything and nothing. She made me realize I hadn't just survived the past year, I'd begun, piece by piece, to actually live again. In more humbling news, the Empower conference I organized with the nonprofit took on a life of its own this year. What started as a handful of workshops became a multi-day event, with over 100 attendees each day, survivors, therapists, even 2 local high school classes. Against all my cautious instincts, we decided to offer time for story walks. Instead of sitting in a circle, participants could walk quietly through the garden with a partner, pausing to share a memory, a moment of fear, or a fragment of hope whenever they felt safe. It was chaos and beauty. One high schooler, shy and pale, handed me a drawing at the end, a blue flower, shaped like a heart, and the words, "We all get new roots someday." I nearly lost it right there in front of everyone. Over the past few weeks, another unexpected thread has woven into my days. My new partner, I guess it's time to call him that. It feels gentler than boyfriend at my age, and I adopted a rescue dog. Her name is Cricket. She's all floppy ears and mismatched spots, skittish but stubbornly joyous in the way only neglected dogs can be once they finally feel safe. Walking her has become a daily meditation. She sniffs everything, noses into flower beds, and sometimes sits on a patch of grass, refusing to move, demanding that I just be still, too. Every time I bend down, I see the world the way she does, messy, unpredictable, brimming with possibility. As for my late boyfriend's family, they're still in my life. We celebrated his birthday together in the cafe where we once met, each of us quietly marveling at how grief and love aren't opposites but partners, each holding the other's hand. His mother gave me a small photo album she'd assembled. Her son is a baby, a gap-toothed boy, a wild-haired teen sneaking into the attic. She wrote on the first page, "For all the pieces of the story that will always belong to you." I'm still haunted sometimes, by the past, by what could have been, by nights I clutch the pillow and wish he were there to share in all this quiet, hard-won joy. But I'm learning, little by little, not to flinch from the memories. Instead, I try to let them wash over me, knowing that love, which once left me shattered, still lives inside every stubborn wildflower, every accidental smile, every anxious but determined step forward. If you'd asked me a year ago what I wanted most, I would have said, to erase everything, to get my old life back, to wake up and find it all undone. Now, for the first time, I don't want to go back. I want this life, a patchwork mess, rich with possibility, laughter and tears, new friendships and second chances, and yes, the garden that keeps reminding me of hope.